Welcome to the What It Takes podcast, where we talk to successful entrepreneurs, leaders, and CEOs across different industries. I'm your host, Darren, and in each episode, we're going to figure out how they got through difficult times, but most importantly, what it really takes to succeed. So whether you're just starting out your career or you're looking to level up your business game, my goal is to give you real insights and practical lessons from people who have achieved what you want. Welcome back to the What It Takes podcast, everyone. I'm joined today by Dane Doerfert. Now, Dane, you are quite the extraordinary man. You have a background within banking and multiple businesses, but you didn't really pursue entrepreneurship until a later age. And that's when you started a real estate business, and you've also now partnered as of recently with Forbes, which is awesome. So huge congrats on that. But yeah, first of all, a huge welcome to you here. I'm very excited to talk to you today. How are you?
Thank you so much, Darren. I'm doing well since I have to spend some time with you, which is always fun. Thank you so much for the kind words and the introduction. I actually started quite late. I think I was 29 when I started my business. No, actually, I was older. I started 29 as a freelance agent, and then I started the business being 31, 32, something like that. So not the young entrepreneur. And I'm in an old economy business, as you said. I work in real estate, which really is an old economy. But it's being disrupted like so many businesses today, which is fun. And I really enjoy being here. Thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to share a little bit and to talk a little bit over some interesting topics.
Absolutely. So give me and the audience a little bit of an overview in terms of what is it that you do today? What is it encompass? What exactly is it?
Sure. So it's quite easy. I sell houses and homes. I own a brokerage in Germany, in northern Germany. We are located in a beautiful city of Hamburg, which is the absolute best city in Germany. Actually, just this month or end of last month, New York Times gave out the 52 most secret cities, and Hamburg is on number 13. So It really is the city to go to in Germany. So huge invite to everyone.
Here. It's also...
I'm not biased at all. No. No, but really, we just sell real estate. So the everyday home that people live in, or the huge villa, or the best penthouse you could find, we sell this. This is what we do. And we don't become owners. We're just an intermediary. So basically what an agent does, right? So sell homes.
Incredible. But you didn't always, like you mentioned in the beginning, you started rather late, right? Freelancer at 29 and then your own business at 31, which is, by the way, not really that late. I think that a lot of people essentially people start a lot younger today than they used to. But at the same time, you always had this desire to be an entrepreneur, even when you were younger, right? Mm-hmm. What was that like for you? When did you sort of understand and feel like, you know what, I wanted to do or create something? When did this come, and how long have you had this?
I don't know. I think, Darren, I had it as a kid. I was kind of raised by my grandparents, and they used to live on a farm, but they didn't own the farm. They were just renting out. So all our neighbors had all the beautiful horses and were quite wealthy, and we were the guys renting there, right? So I remember being a kid, I asked my grandparents, like, how much is that piece of land there, and can't we buy it, and then they were like arguing, like, it's nothing worth, you cannot build something. I was like, maybe in 20 years it will be something worth. So I was always kind of thinking on, like how to become a better version, how to gain money, how business works, what differentiates the people who are successful from the people who are not in life and in business. And because of how I was raised up, I was always somehow kind of more a rebellious kid, I would say. So I always had difficulties in school. I was not the best student at all. I was one of the worst, where the teachers wanted to get rid of, which I totally understand. If I would be a teacher, I would have wanted to get rid of the guy like me because I was only doing nonsense. But I remember that I always wanted to become my own boss, that I always wanted to start a company, and that those ideas were there because I wanted to have freedom, right? I wanted to have freedom in my decisions, not being part of, I mean, everybody's part of the system, but, not being forced in some direction, but have the freedom. And I think this is what money can buy you, is really freedom, right? Freedom to spend your time how you want, freedom to do what you want, freedom to give who you want to give to, freedom to help people, freedom in anything. That is something good that money can do, right? And so that idea was always there, kind of.
And growing up then, that this idea of freedom, were you aware of that at such a young age, or did that sort of come
Uh,
later?
that came later. I didn't realize that when I was a kid. As a kid, I was always telling I want to become a millionaire. I remember this one case where I was talking to my grandparents and they were asking me what you want to do in life. I was like, become a millionaire. They were like, that's not a job. I was like, well, how is that not a job? They're like, yeah, why not policeman or firefighter? I was like, no, I want to become a millionaire. They were like, why? And I was like, because, then I can do whatever I want and
Yeah,
live the good life, basically. So as a kid, I was
yeah.
not really understanding it. But I think
But you
deep inside, I sensed it, but I couldn't really wrap my mind around it.
And then, you realize that you want to become rich, you want freedom. You don't, you weren't aware of freedom at the time, but you just knew you wanted to be rich. What was the path then from that young age up until becoming a freelancer? What did you do in between that?
So in between that, I did when I was since like my family was not rich. I would say we were on the kind of lower end for Germany, which is of
Mm,
course on a worldwide scale still very, very good.
mm,
Being very fortunate, being that person that I am, born in Germany where like doctors are free and schooling is free and everything is basically taken care of, even if you're less fortunate. But still, for German circumstances, I would say on the on the lower end, definitely.
mm,
So I had to, in order to spend money, I had to make money. So I was kind of working here and there, doing all kinds of jobs, and always not being so, I mean, being happy where I was, but always looking for, man, like, what can I do? What can I
yeah.
do? And I was not one of those computer kids, that at a young age knew how to build their own computers. I was really not into that at all. I was kind of the guy that was playing outside and having fun with friends and not being so much in front of the computer. So I always thought, if you want to make money, you need to do something online. But then I had no idea on how I should do it. So I always later in life, I always said, if I'm not a millionaire by the age of 30, this is what I'm going to do. And so there's a special food that is only served in Hamburg or in the northern part of Germany, but especially in Hamburg. And I always said, if I'm not a millionaire by 30, I will open up a franchise store with this special food all over Germany and then maybe in Europe. And so this was my default mode, so to say, my vision that I would do if I would not make it by 30.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, fortunate enough, I didn't open up. I didn't ending up open this because real estate is quite a good niche to be in, and I really love it. And we are successful, so no need for that.
But you did have jobs before 29. I believe it was in
Yes,
banking
yes.
and other
Yes, so I
areas.
was I was in banking. I was working for a local bank, for the biggest local bank for 2.5 years. So I was doing an apprenticeship, which is something that the German systems offer. So you don't need to go to become a student in order to work for like the better paid jobs, but you can do something like an apprenticeship, which is accepted
Mm,
in Germany, but it would not be accepted in the States, for example. In Germany, I could go all to the top with that, but not in other countries. So I was
mm,
doing that for 2 years and working for another year. I studied economics after that with basically economics, business administration, a little bit of law and sociology just for interest. And then I was working for one of the biggest companies in Hamburg that had its own incubator. So what that incubator was doing was opening up startups and selling them within the same company structure.
mm,
So that was my first touch point with the whole startup ecosystem. And I do have many friends that own successful startup nowadays, but that
Awesome.
back then, that was my kind of first step. And I got to know all those people working in this field, and many of them are very successful nowadays. And I was fortunate to get to know them at a young age where nobody was successful yet. And now we kind of all are lucky enough to have a little bit of success. I thought, okay, so this is how you run a company from scratch, right? You need to
Yeah.
find somebody that has enough resources, that believes in your vision, you make a business plan, and then this is how you're successful. And so I was thinking, okay, what can I do? And then I went back to studies and did a master's program, a year master's program, and something very drastically changed with private, which I don't want to share, changed within this year, that I thought, okay, so I need to start. I need to start working. This is something I promised to my wife as well, that after my master's, she doesn't need to work anymore. So I need to figure out a plan. So I was sitting together with a friend who was basically consulting big companies on leadership. So I was asking him, what shall I do? And he said, with everything you're telling me, asking lots of questions, you need to be your own boss. You need to start a company. So again, it was, somehow this voice from somebody that knew me. And I thought, okay, but what shall I do? And then I came up with real estate. A friend of mine owned a brokerage. So I made a deal with him and said, hey, why don't you teach me everything that you know that made you successful? And in his city, he's a top notch. He's best of the line. And teach me, and I'll work for you for 2.5, 3 years, and basically pay back what you taught me. And then I'm going to start my own business. And so that's what we do, or that's what we did. And then 6 years ago, it was time to start their own business.
That's incredible. I'm hearing so many areas that I want to jump into here, and I want to start off with probably the first thing because you did answer a few of the questions that just popped up in my head later on. But throughout those years when you worked in different industries, because it sounded like something happened at some point in your life, a friend told you like, hey, it sounds like you need to go into, be your own boss. Had you ever felt throughout this journey, throughout this period of time, did you ever feel like this pull towards entrepreneurship, or wasn't it until you had that breaking point or that
No,
time?
it was all the time. It was all the time that I was constantly looking, what could I do, but I was just not figuring out what to do. And I think nowadays it is, I mean, people are so fortunate, especially in these times, because it's so easy nowadays, even if you're not a techie. And in my mind, I was always thinking, I'm not a techie, so what can I do? Because all the techies were the ones being successful because they know, I mean, for them, it was easy to write code. I remember back, like, before there was Airbnb, before there was Uber, I was thinking, like, can't you rent this out to private people? So of course, I'm not saying I'm the smart ass in the room and I was the only one having these ideas. There were probably thousands of people that had those ideas, but some companies that really went for it. And I think the difference with those companies is they somehow had access to knowledge and money, right? And I didn't have neither. So I never went for it. And I think nowadays, if I have an idea, I'm fortunate enough to just follow this idea and either the, I mean, buy the resources that I need, or I have enough friends that could give me honest feedback. Is it a good idea? And then jump on it with their companies or with their knowledge, right? So I'm in a different position. But back then, when I had basically no resources, I always had this pull within me to be an entrepreneur, but I never saw the way how to. And I think especially young kids nowadays, I actually just read today, sorry to squeeze this in, that there's a kid in my neighborhood who's only 13 years old who started his own company, and he's the son
Cool.
of a business person that I know from my city. And I just saw a TV interview on him and I thought, man, this is so great because today you can start with nothing because
Yes.
there's AI, there's all tools in the online where you could just find how to set up everything. You can do drop shipping.
Yeah.
There's so many possibilities, right, Darren? So I think people nowadays are really fortunate, and because it doesn't take nothing to start. And back then, my idea was it was a lot different. Maybe it wasn't, but that was what I felt.
Yes. No, but it's very true what you're saying. The infrastructure is a lot more, it's more it's better than it used to be, right? So if someone wants to start something, and this is what to digress a little here, I don't know if it was Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos who were talking about this, but they want to do for space travel, they essentially want to build this up to the point that it becomes similar to entrepreneurship today, where if you're a young person wanting to build something within space and advance civilization to become a multiplanetary species, the infrastructure, the fundamentals should be there, right? And that's sort of the age that we're living in now when it comes to entrepreneurship and starting your own business online, which is really cool. But okay, so you started then your business in real estate. What was
Mhm.
what was that shift like? Because you went from a regular job. You'd never really been an entrepreneur, unless if you take away the freelancing. But you'd never really been an entrepreneur. Was that shift challenging for you? Was it exciting? What was that like? Starting that for the first time.
It was very exciting. It was very exciting, but somehow it just evolved because real estate was not something that was totally strange to me. Because in banking, I mean, you do work with mortgages and
Mm,
loans, right? So there's this, I mean, I had many touch points with real estate and many friends who worked within the sector. So it was not nothing new. And then being a freelance agent in Germany, it was basically in the beginning not that much of a new chapter to start their own company because from regulation wise I was staying the same. It was just a few add-ons like build your web page, do some more regularity stuff. So it was a bit more, but the jump was not huge, to be honest. It
I
was not
see.
like I was jumping in a different universe. It was kind of the same with a little bit more to do. And of course, all the calls ended up with me and not at some other person's office. So it was a lot more work. And if I would have known what I've gotten myself into it, to be honest, I don't know if my vision would have been strong enough if I would have known right in the beginning how much work it would be, because what followed was basically 5 years with 80 to 100 hours. So no free time. And it was challenging at many, many times. And it still is sometimes.
Well, what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in your early years starting Doerfert?
It was regulatory wise because Germany is very strict with all kinds of regulations. The Germans
Uh-huh.
just love this. First of all, to understand what you really need to do, because there's nobody tells you what to do, but they'll fine you if you don't do, right? So it was not being the person who is being fined because he doesn't know what he needs to do, because I was doing great at the job. I mean, and the other company, I was the best agent, right? So I knew what I was doing, but then all the regulatory stuff was challenging.
Hmm.
And then, of course, the working hours were crazy because I was fortunate enough that people somehow loved to work with me. And so it was just a lot of work. And I never said no. I always said, sure, we can figure something out. And
Yeah.
I mean, friends
Optimistic
start,
mindset.
of course, of course.
Yeah.
And I always saw a chance in basically every approach. So I also loved it. I think it's just you can do it for such a time, and then at some point your body tells you, maybe
Yeah.
you need to step back a little bit. I'm sure you and many people can relate, right? You want to do it, but then at some point you realize, wow, it's 5 years is a long time.
Yeah.
And so did some changes to that. But I think the biggest challenges were the regulatory stuff. Then, of course, being a boss for the first time. Before I was always reporting to bosses and seeing what were the mistakes they were doing, different
Mm.
mindset. And now I was the boss and I was seeing, I cannot do everything perfectly because sometimes I just don't know,
Yeah.
sometimes I do know and there's just different perspectives on on topics that we're talking about. So being a boss and working with people is another thing. And because people are different and that is
Mhm.
perfectly perfect, but it also reveals some challenges. And then, of course, the last 2.5 years, the real estate sector and also the VC, the startup world have been very interrupted by economic changes. And
Mm.
Germany has been hit quite severely with lots of even the big companies failing for bankruptcy. So, me working in real estate, there's been less and less transactions over all asset classes. It was at some point 50% down in transaction, the real estate sector in Germany over all asset classes. And that was very challenging because before it was only going up. The company, we were growing sometimes by 90% a year. Everything was fine the first years. And then 2.5 years ago, that was interrupted. And that was, looking at not good numbers for the first time in your life. It was just new. So we managed it and we're better off now than we were before. But that was challenging, and I was having lots of sleepless nights, to be honest, even at some point sitting there and thinking, okay, who do I have to let go? Because I just cannot afford the salaries anymore at some point, being really honest. But this is just something that you go through and that you need to master, I think, in order to understand and to be successful at the end.
So some of the lessons that you learned that got you through those challenges were, first of all, cutting costs, right? Where you really had
Definitely,
to
yes.
just go down in terms of your budget. Was there anything else that you had to do in order to get through that challenge?
Of course, we had to drive sales up because if sales are down, I mean, you need to have money coming in, right? So
Of course.
I was partnering with quite a few startups, and some of them made it and some of them didn't make it. And the startups that never made it, where I was consulting them or helping them or being invested in them, it was always because they didn't know how to sell. They had some of them had the best products I've ever seen, like within their niche. It was the best, really, and they were the brightest minds, but there were no salespeople involved. And if you can have the best product if you don't know how to sell it, because it will not sell by itself. It just won't. So if you don't understand marketing and sales, you're done. You're done before you started. And so, of course, it was cutting costs, but it was also how can we get sales up? What do we need to do to get back to get our sales back up? So if you handle those two, if you handle your costs, and if you know how to do sales, I think you're fine.
I mean, when it comes to learning these things, right? I think that a lot of people, because to me, and probably to you as well, it comes very naturally, right? Like you see this event happening, and logically, it's like, well, I just got to decrease costs, increase sales, right? But I think for a lot of people, business doesn't always come very naturally. Is there any way that they can figure out, or I would actually rephrase it, are there any specific resources or any tips that they can use and apply to get through a challenge? Like, let's say if they're in a similar situation like you were, right, where economy is just not going that well. For someone who might be in a similar situation, what could they do? Is there anything that they can, a better or a way for them to figure out what to do in their specific situation?
To be honest, I think in the end it comes down to those two things. You need to cut costs, which is maybe not a good thing because cutting costs means you're losing stuff. You're either losing people or you're losing expensive software that you need, or you're losing investments opportunities for the future. So it will cost you something, right? If you cut costs, it will cost you something. If not, it's the best cut, but it costs something. And then you need to handle sales. And I think this is the two things. For me personally, there's one other very, very important and big stuff for me, which I haven't mentioned, but I'm rather religious, or not religious, but I'm a person of faith, I would say. So I trust in Jesus as my Lord and Savior. And so I trust him with everything that I do. So I kind of work or go by the mantra that I will do everything that I can do for myself, but then there's some parts that I can't do and that God has to do. And so I'm not passive, being lean back and saying, close my eyes, God will take care of it. But I will do everything that I can do, being in this mindset, being in the spirit that I know it's, if I have success, it's because God gave me the right strategies. It's because God gave me, maybe the right people at time, or opened the right doors. And if I'm not successful, it's maybe because I didn't, work enough or did enough. So not blaming it on God, because I know God has good plans for all of us. And I think this is something that helped me a lot in those nights I was talking about, where I had difficulties, because my mind was just pacing, how can I handle this? And then just leaning back at sometimes saying, like, I can't, I did everything I did. And now I just have to put my relief or get my relief and say, God, I think I did what I could do. If I forgot anything, please just hint me on it. I will do everything I can, but I want to give this to you, and either you handle the situation or you don't handle it. Like there's nothing more I can do. So I think for me, there's a certain layer that, of course, will not reply to people who don't believe that there's a higher being, right? Because
Mm.
I mean, what shall they do? Everything is on themselves. And for me, I know that it's not only on myself, and I know I can trust God. So that is something that helped me a lot. But getting back to the original question, I think it's just really, you need to have those. I mean, as you said, you need to decrease costs and increase your sales.
Yeah, yeah.
And how to learn that, I don't know, just read about it. There's a lot of good books written on it, watch videos, hear your podcast, ask Darren, like learn.
How important was faith for you? Because obviously you're mentioning that this was something that was a factor that helped you through it, but how important was it for your success in generally?
Percent. Very, very, very important. Very important, because the vision I have, it doesn't only, so my vision is for me to have what I mentioned earlier, to have financial freedom to kind of do what I want. My doing what I want is not being on the golf course all day and having a cigar and, I don't know, Cuba Libre or whatever, or champagne or whatsoever, and just wasting my life. But I believe that, as I just said, God has put each and every one of us on this earth in order to reach a certain goal. And he's the creator of life, so he knows the goal for myself best. And I think the goal that I would love to reach is to help as many of the poorest of the poor as I could do. And so this is my life's goal. So my personal goal is to have financial freedom in order to do this, in order to do
Yes.
foundational work, in order to go places where there's people just desperate because they have nothing, no food, no drinks, nothing, because there's war, because there's, just bad stuff happening. And then the vision for the company is in order to be a vehicle that can drive that, so that can set me as a person free, but that can also give money away to good cause. So this is kind of the vision that I focus on, and that I want to reach. And again, faith plays an important role, because if it was not for faith, if it wasn't be for Jesus, I would not have this vision, because this is something that is birthed out of my faith. And on the other side, I know that I cannot reach this vision by myself. I just can't, I depend on God, and that's totally fine. And so it plays a huge role. It plays the major role. Yeah.
That's amazing, man. Thank you for sharing that. Now, Dane, one thing that I also wanted to kind of go into was your mission, like you were talking about, right? Because you had this vision, your personal goal, the business goal. I want to get back to this a little bit later, but I first want to focus on the business and your growth there. Because when you first started in real estate, right, obviously you got this mentoring for the first year or two. You go off on your own. And one of the things that you mentioned on our call was that you also deal with very luxury properties. I mean, you're also a partner with Forbes Global Properties, right? And you don't get that by
Sure.
just managing small homes. But that's where you started, wasn't it? You started with average homes.
Yes.
How
Yeah.
did the transition for you look like, going from that point to starting selling bigger, better, more luxury homes?
Yeah. I think, Darren, it is also something. So there's a Bible verse. Don't ask me where it is in the Bible, but you could easily Google it. That says, if you are faithful with the things that are trusted to you, even the small things, God can put you on bigger things. So I really go by that, and I want to be found trustworthy with everything I do, if it's small, if it's big, because I know that if I handle things well where I am, my character is actually strong enough that God can give me more, right?
Mm.
Not in order to have more, but just to be trusted more, right? It's like with a kid, maybe, if you tell a kid, look, this is a lighter, you can use it to light, or you could use it to burn, to do something good or to do something bad. And the kid burns himself at the first time you won't give him, like maybe a bigger lightning instruction thing, right? So you learn little by little. And how I started the first house I sold was actually a friend's house. So his mom died, and I helped him through the process of that. And then I made a sale. That was the first sale of his house. And then another friend approached me, said, "Hey, I have those homes, and I think about leaving Germany. Maybe you could sell those." And then, if you just do a good job, if you just if you don't do bad stuff, if you don't rip people off, if you're just being honest, if you do a good job, if you do your homework, if you do everything you can for your client, if you try to reach the best prices, and if you do that, if you deliver, I think it's just natural that those people, because they love the work that you are doing, they will recommend you. And then it's just a natural thing for me. At some point, we were fortunate enough that some of the most wealthy people of our city and even from the country, at some point we were found doing business with them, and they like what we did. So we did more business together, and it's just, that's how it evolved. And then at some point we were handling some of the finest properties in the city, and it was off market. It was not even like that. I mean, people didn't even know. You couldn't find it on the web because it was all off market. We were handling some of the best transactions, and I was like, wow, this is so nice. And yeah, and of course, being member of Forbes Global Properties is really, we're very, very fortunate to be the member in Germany and to be the exclusive member here in Northern Germany. And they have picked us because they saw what we did over the years. Forbes Global Properties really is a network of the finest real estate agents and brokers all over the world, dealing with the nicest homes, dealing with all those super high net worth individuals all over the world. And that gives us so much more leverage, Darren, because Germans love to buy all over the world. So now we can connect them, and they can be with the same company all over the world and buy trophy homes. And the same is true vice versa. Now our American partners, recommend people, hey, we have German clients, they want to make a sale in Germany, and we say, sure, we'd love to help them. So that's actually even a bigger step now because of those international relationships. Yeah.
That's incredible. But then going back to when you started getting more bigger clients, you mentioned that all of a sudden you found yourself doing business with them. Was that as a consequence of the great work that you were doing, and then naturally through word of mouth, you reached those clients and then it developed?
Yes. So it naturally developed. And on the other hand, we were also looking and putting our strategy on getting higher price listings. And of course, if you sell a villa for, I don't know, whatever, 10, 15, 20, 25 million, the people that reach out to you in order to buy it, I mean, how many people are there that can afford it, right? Not the average Joe, right? So of course, the people that reach out to you are some of the people that are very successful in life on money terms. And that just puts you in surroundings. And if they like what you do, if they trust your work, and I think this is something very important because you're dealing with, huge value propositions for the people, right? So if you do a good job in that and people trust you, of course, they're happy to work with you. So it is something that came naturally at some point, but we also kind of reached for it when we felt it was a time to go for it.
And one of the things as well that you spoke to me about when we first spoke was some of the lessons that you've learned from very wealthy people, right? What are some big lessons that you've learned from them after working more closely with them?
So, I learned the view on money is totally different, because if you kind of always have enough, because I came from a background where there was not always enough. There were times where there was definitely not enough. And so I grew up with having a mindset of money was always an issue kind of thing. And people who don't have that issue, either because they worked themselves out or they've been fortunate to be born in a family that had maybe wealth for centuries, they have a different mindset on money. It really is just a form of freedom and power and basically freedom to do what they want, right? And that helped me shift my mind to what is money? What does money do? And of course, if I was dealing with high net worth individuals, I remember this one occasion of a good client and a dear client that I really value, and he invited me over to come to his hotel in order to talk through a deal. And so he was like, so what are the numbers? Help me with the numbers again. What is the commission? And I remember our commission was, I think, 250,000 euro, which is not small, right? I mean, there's bigger commissions that could be earned, but it is quite a bit. So he put
50,000
euro, yeah.
commission is massive. That's a lot.
Yeah, so we were talking it through, and I remember he was putting it in his little paper sheet. He was putting 0.25. And I was like, so this is what it really is for him, right? And probably he wouldn't care if it would be 0.275, right? He wouldn't probably notice, right? So then it was like, okay, so there's a whole new perspective. And being able now to talk with billionaires who have a totally different perspective on time, right? They just want to have things fixed, and they don't want no problems to occur. They just want to be flexible, right? So this is something that I really learned working with high net worth individuals.
Do you think that perspective on money, do you think that they're sort of pre-rich, where they view money like that even before they become extremely wealthy? Or is that consequence of what happens once they do become wealthy and they just have so much that now they have to view it on another perspective?
That's a good question. I think it's just my perspective. I totally agree if there's 100 different perspectives. My perspective, being in the position that I'm in, is if I look at those people who made the money for themselves, who really worked their butts off, it is something that they learn. I wouldn't say the mindset is there before. I mean, the mindset is there to be successful, of course, because you need to put a lot of work in. You need to have a high standard, a high work ethos, right? Otherwise, it will be tough, or maybe in newer economies it will work. But all the people I know that made money, especially in old economy, they all worked there. I mean, who came from nothing, they all worked a lot for being where they are. And for them, it is something that evolved, because in the beginning, for example, if you have nothing, how much worth is your hour? I don't know, 50 euro, 20 euro. Back then, I was working in a house for old people for 7.50 euro an hour, and I was cleaning dishes. So my hour was work 7.50 euro. My hour now, I wouldn't work for 7.50. No. Not a chance. No. And if you talk to somebody that his company makes him maybe, I don't know, like 500,000 an hour or so, or like, I don't know, 50,000 an hour, of course their perspective changes, like if my hour is worth 50,000, I have a different perspective on what do I do with my time than, my hours just work 100 euro or 20 euro or whatsoever. So I think that is something that evolves with time.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. That does make a lot of sense.
Sorry, Darren, I have to plug in my device very quickly because I didn't thought I would run out so quickly. Just give me a second.
We can always cut this part out. I'm just going to take a note. 41.
Sorry for that.
41.45.
Thank you.
But yes, no, I think that when it comes to that perspective, it is very interesting to sort of think about this, because I have a few friends that they don't have a lot of money, but they pretend they have a lot of money. And I see, and the way they think of it, it's like they'll have 1,000 euros and it's like, oh yeah, I only have 10, 10, right? And then so they kind of, similar to what you were talking about this guy did, where he viewed 250,000 as 0.25, right? It's a scale, it's how you view it. But when it comes to growing your business, obviously you've reached that stage now where you've stabilized, you have a good network of individuals that you can reach out to, you have good sales, partner now with Forbes. What is your vision moving forward? Where do you hope to go with your business? What's the next step for you? What's the goal?
The goal is to become the natural choice, if especially um, high net worth and super high net worth individuals think about selling their home, to be the natural choice. So that means scaling the company with the best people we can find on the market who serve
Mhm.
those clients well. That is a goal that we will not reach by tomorrow, definitely not. But Hamburg is very rich in tradition if it comes to real estate. So Engel and Volkers, I don't know if you know them, but they were started in our city. There's actually quite a few huge brokerages that are operating Europe-wide or even worldwide that were started in our city. So somehow there's a huge history of real estate in our city. And Hamburg is quite a wealthy city, to be honest. Most millionaires in Germany living in Hamburg, just as a side fact. So, but that is the goal. And then the vision personally and for the company I mentioned earlier. But yeah, being the natural choice for high net worth and super high net worth individuals.
And how do you get there?
This is something, how do we get there? I think I answered that earlier by just being faithful where we are, performing where we are, being a good steward of what we have and serving the clients that we already serve and being faithful. And then I think it will just come naturally, to be honest, if you're faithful where you are. But this is something that goes back to my belief again, because I think if you trust on God, you will not be overlooked. It might come late, or you feel it's late, like why is nothing happening? But I think God knows the perfect timing, and maybe your character is not as far as your wishes at the moment. So maybe it takes a little longer, but it will come. I have no doubt.
And then apart from, of course, giving 100% in terms of every single deal, because I think that can look different from person to person because each person has their own sort of personal limit, if that makes sense, right? Where someone
Sure,
can 100% for you may not be 100% for someone else, right? So that
sure.
could be uh, 100% of your output is 100 or 150% of someone else. In terms
Mhm.
of specific strategies or something that I could look at and be like, okay, that's what I can do to grow my business in real estate. What specific strategies have you applied in your business that have helped you grow?
So if we talk about real estate and specifically being an agent or being a brokerage, see, the difference is we don't sell a product, right?
Mm,
We don't print pens and then okay, let's get the pens out, right? We have the pens produced, it cost us this, we need to make this, so let's get them out. But actually we have two sales involved in our business, because first we need to get the product, we need to
mm,
get the home, and that's the first sale. We need to talk to whoever's owning the house and convince them we are the right choice for you. So I think something that you can do is you need to have the right strategy in order to get the listings, to get the product, because if you don't have the product, you can't make a sale. And once you have that, of course, you need to understand, how do I find the right buyer for whatever I have to offer? And I think in the beginning, you need to have, if people want to start in this field, they need to have an idea and a strategy, to how do I get listings? And I've talked to a lot of people over the years who started, like, there's good money involved in real estate, like commission, 6% commission in Germany. Like, wow, I wanna work in that, like doing the numbers. And then I start, like, my neighbor is wanting to sell, and I will sell the house. Yeah, that's fine, and you can make a nice bonus of that. But then that's like once in a lifetime. Like, how many times is your neighbor going to sell, right? That's, if you have one neighbor or maybe two neighbors, maybe that happens two times in your lifespan, maybe three, four times. In Germany, people love to stick to their homes. So maybe
yeah.
one time, right? And then, so if you want to, and then they're all excited. Yeah, that was so easy money. Yeah, it was easy money because you know the guy. and then maybe the price was okay. It was not over the market, and you were lucky. You were lucky. You had a lucky shot, and out of this lucky shot, they think I can make a living easy like this out of
Yeah,
it. I'm the
yeah,
king.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
what you said about your friends who have nothing but feel like they have the whole world. And I think there's a huge misunderstanding here, because if you don't have a strategy for listings, you will not be successful. You can't be successful. So better do not start if you don't have if you have get listings, like if fabric is producing pants or whatever. You need to have a clear strategy how to get this.
What
Otherwise you
is,
will fail.
yes, for someone who is going into real estate, wants to do this, or might have even have started, what is a strategy that you've used to get listings?
So we've done cold door knocking. So
Hmm.
we went all the hard stuff. So we went into different kinds of streets, knocked on the door, said, "Hello, I'm Dane Doerfert. I'm interested in selling your house. A little bit different, but basically this is what we do." And so it's really rough, especially the winters here. Man, they're cold.
Yeah.
This is something that we apply and that everybody can do. Of course, there's some more strategy behind it, but this is something that we
What you
do. Then in
say, and of course, and
what we say, where we go to,
yeah.
we do our research, of course. But in other strategies, so we have 4 pillars,
Mhm.
how we get the listings. So this is pillar one, and it's not the most favored ones by the agents, because obviously it's a toughest one. But I think if you know how to master this one, you can master all the other ones easily.
Mhm. Mhm.
So the second pillar is basically the network, right? Have your own network, go to network events, get to know people. Um, so this is the second pillar, have your own network. And then the third one is obviously the clients that you're already dealing with, because if you're selling a home, there's always people who will want to buy the home. So, enlarge your clients by getting those kind of
Mhm.
warm leads, right? Because they come to you
Mhm.
and want something to you. So that's easier than being at someone's stranger at the door and he thinks you're Jehovah's Witness, or you want to sell I don't know, whatever.
Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah, that's what I was told many times. They were like, we don't want this, like. So yeah. And then the fourth one is we buy leads. So we buy leads
Mm.
by companies that are doing the research for us. There's a number of huge companies that do it. There's smaller agencies that do it. So we just buy leads, and then there it's more of the new economy thing. So that's easy
Mm.
to calculate, right? So how much is the lead? How much is the agent that's working on it? How much is the cost? How much is all the costs involved with it? How much is getting out? Does it make sense or not? So that's something you cannot start with if you start at zero, because you don't have money for it, because it's quite
Mhm.
money intense, and you need some time to get it working. But this is something that does work if you work continuously on it and if you have the right strategies figured out. So this is the 4 numbers that we trust on, that we rely on in getting our listings.
Amazing. And one thing that really sticks out here as well is, certain skills that you need to have. But one of them that really sticks out is this relational communication skill, right? Because you're dealing with
Mhm.
people all the time. You're knocking on doors, like you said, you're networking, right? All this includes talking to someone else, making a good impression. In terms of skills like that, is that one of, if not the most important, would you say? Or is there something that's more important than that skill right there?
It is the most important, Darren. Darren, you have definitely an eye for the right questions. The most important is to have empathy, to be
Mm.
able to understand what the other person is going through. Why is that? Because we're not only dealing with people, what we're dealing with people in extreme situations. Why?
Yes.
Because for most people, handling a real estate transaction is the highest transaction they will handle in their whole life. The
Mm.
most money that is involved, the most that is to lose, the most questions to ask because you have no idea what you're talking about. So This is something that is very, very big in people's mind, even though they will not say it, but this is something that is true. And then at the other point is who is selling real estate. In Germany, most of the time it is either because maybe partnerships don't work out and there's maybe divorces or something. So people are in extreme emotionally situations where maybe they're even fighting on the property. So you get into very unstable situations where anything can happen. One hates the other. Lawyers are talking, unstable. Or it is related to age. So people have to sell because they can't walk the stairs up, because the partner has to go to a house for old people. They have to move to a house for old people. Somebody inherited the house, but he grew up there, or like 6 siblings inherited it, and one is living in New York, the other one, nobody knows where he's off. And, so there's lots of uncertainty. There's a huge transaction volume, and we are dealing with people in extreme situations. That's why emotional intelligence is the most important. If you don't have emotional intelligence, you are not right in residential real estate. Maybe in commercial real estate, it's a different game, but not in residential real estate. If you have high emotional intelligence, you will probably be a good realtor.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. In terms of having a high emotional intelligence, and you're talking about empathy, these qualities are also closely tied to your vision, right, for the future, your philanthropic mission of helping people. Talk to me a little bit about this.
Sure. Can we do a quick break now that I know that is possible, because my colleague just brought me the wrong adapter and it's not really charging. So please give me 30 seconds and then
I got you. 56 minutes and 10 seconds. I got you.
So this one is the right one with a bigger one.
I have the same thing as well, like with sometimes my friend.
So the other one was for my cell phone, and that doesn't help. I mean, it helps a little with my computer, but not too much.
Yeah, that's a huge difference in voltage and output, right? So huge difference.
Sorry for that. Now I'm all set up.
Yeah, let me just take a note here. 57. Makes it easier for the editors, so they don't have to scout through the whole. In the beginning, I would.
Is it actually a person doing it? It's not some AI program?
Person is going through it, editing it, and then they obviously use AI, but a person will always go through it to make sure that it's clean, that it's, because sometimes in the beginning it was only AI and it messed everything up. And it didn't mess everything up, but there were parts that just weren't, it needed that human touch still. So a human will then go over, make sure everything is good, and then it goes live. But then before, it was just AI go live, not watching it, and then you see the video and it's like, oh, we need to edit this out. And it was in the podcast and it was just terrible. So delete, re-upload. Oh, yeah.
Okay, good that you learned.
Well, you learn from your mistakes. Right? All right, but okay. So going back into it, you finished on emotional intelligence, like you were talking about. And I wanted to follow up with this because emotional intelligence, empathy, all these skills, or not skills, but essentially qualities that you have, they're also quite related to your philanthropy, right? Your mission of helping people, which you briefly mentioned earlier. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about this. Talk to me about this and your mission there. What is your goal there?
My goal is to really help as many people that are less fortunate, that belong to the poorest of the poor. I mean, in Germany or the UK or wherever, there's also people dealing with all kinds of stuff and people in very bad situations, right? I still find it different in third world countries where the basic needs aren't covered. I see there's lots of bad stuff coming out of this, like lots of criminal stuff and lots of bad stuff like child prostitution and like all the bad stuff that's happening and that's going wrong in this world. And so after I graduated from high school, I wanted to avoid to serve in the German military, which I needed to do. And I found a way to avoid this by working for a German NGO. And so I did this in a drug rehabilitation center in Manila in the Philippines. So there we were taking in, since it was an NGO, we were taking in the poorest of the poor. They were coming from dump sites, living on garbage. And sometimes I got them out of prison. Sometimes I went to their homes and I saw like how people are living, and something happened within me that moved me very, very deeply. And I thought, man, this cannot be. This is nothing that people should live in. And probably a very idealistic idea, and probably an idea that everyone would have that would see it from a Western perspective, right? So nothing special at all. But somehow I was moved enough that I wanted to make it a life's mission to help these people. So what we are doing is actually we are supporting some of these people that I know in the Philippines. We have supported people all over in all kinds of different settings and nations. But for me, as a personal goal, I always say I would love to see a whole nation basically come out of poverty, and I believe it is possible. And of course, it will not be because of me. Stupid to think that. And especially Asia is evolving a lot. I was just back in the Philippines and I was amazed by what has happened in Manila. It is a mega city, like 20, officially 15 million people living there, lots of money there, lots of poor people as well, but also quite a bit of money, huge skyscrapers, banks, like lots of things going on. But then there is those slum areas still where people are living off garbage, really. So for me, I think it is just, the vision never ends, because there will always be poor people. I think in my lifetime, we will not see it, that there's not people who will not have to suffer from getting, drinking water. There will be huge war on water in the future, I believe. And so I think it will always be there. But for me specifically, is I would love to see a whole nation change. And I already saw it looking back 17 years when I was first there. And when we started the support with the little money that we had, like when I was still a student, we started that, right? So when I was in banking, we started that. So it was maybe only a couple of €100 that we sent over. So really just a tiny bit. But this is the philosophy I go by, start where you are. Don't wait for something. Start where you are. And then if you're found trustworthy, if you do a good job in where you are, things will come easily. And this is what I believe for the foundational work as well. So we start where we are and we do what we can do now. But I also believe that this will be a lot bigger in the future. How big? I have no idea. I have not made a plan and say I want to donate €1 billion whatsoever, like something that I cannot get my mind around now. I just go step by step and see what we can do where we are.
Incredible, man. That's really incredible. You have obviously not just set it as your mission and vision for the future, but you're already doing it now as well, which is the big difference there, right? Like a lot of people have this goal. It's like, once I get to 100 million, I will then do it, right? But
but then you won't do it because if you haven't learned to do it before, then you won't do it.
Yeah.
And this is something that maybe for me it was easy to learn because, in Christianity, at least, in a lot of places, it is taught to tithe, right? So to basically give 10% of what you have. This is something that God implemented to the Israelites. And that is there in the Bible, and that I still live by. And so that is easy. And so I have put lots of thoughts in that as well, due to my religious convictions, that why does God want me to give 10% of the money? I asked that question. I was like, so God doesn't need the money. He won't be God if he needs 10% of my €450 that I was earning, on a side job being a student. He doesn't need €45. Come on. How poor would God be? So what else is this? And then if you look at the Bible, my understanding is whatever God wants and asks from us as humans is something to evolve our character. It is actually something that benefits me. And this is something that especially those last years where the amounts that we've given away have enlarged a lot, that it really keeps my heart of being prideful. It keeps my heart of being thinking, oh, this is what you have reached. This is something you did. This is something you can do now. It keeps you on ground and saying, being humble and saying thank you for what you have. And I think actually, if you're a Christian or not, I think this principle of tithing, of giving away 10%, wherever you give it to, like give it to whatever, don't give it to a church. You can give it to an NGO, but give it away so that you or your relatives or your friends don't benefit from it. Give it away. It's a way. You will learn so much from it. And so this is why I believe that if you set this goal only for the future, but don't start acting now, it will be so tough in the future if you don't learn it when you're still small.
That's awesome. That's good advice, actually. I was going to ask you, one of my final questions for you was what advice would you give to a young entrepreneur starting out in business? And I think this is a great one. But I want to ask you the question still, because I think you still have a lot more knowledge that you're sitting on here. And so what advice would you give to an entrepreneur wanting to start their own business, whether it's real estate or anything else? Is there anything that you'd like to tell that person?
Sure. Just go for it. Don't be afraid. Look out for the right people that can help you. Look for the right business, because nowadays there's so much opportunity, just so much opportunity. And especially now in this very moment with AI evolving, there's tons of opportunities. If you want to go for it, don't be afraid. Just don't be naive, like have some money on the side, like don't be stupid, but go for it. Don't be afraid. Don't let money keep you. Don't let anything keep you. If you have this vision, if you have figured out what you want to do, just go for it. I think that's really what I want to say. Just go for it. Don't be afraid, because this is something I regretted, actually, that I didn't start my career right after banking. This is something I regret. I learned a lot doing my bachelor's and master's, and lots of good connections as well, right? But I feel like if I started back then, I would be on a totally different place now already. Yeah. So don't be afraid, go for it. Don't let people talk you down because you're young, like doesn't matter. And just go for it. And of course, a practical thing, give 10%, and that will teach you how to handle money.
Yeah. You know what? I'm gonna start doing that. I'm gonna start giving away 10%. I'm gonna pledge that. One of the things that I said this year was that I was gonna become a lot better at saving money as well. So I think this is a good thing for me to reflect on and start doing as well.
It won't be easy, I'll tell you, especially in the beginning.
Well, I'll take the pledge back. Before I pledge myself to it, I'm going to reflect deeply about it and think very, very hard on it, and make challenge myself. Start maybe with 5 or somewhere around there, and then increase. Who knows? We'll see. But Dane, I want to thank you a lot for coming on the podcast today, on the What It Takes podcast. I had a real pleasure talking to you. It was awesome. Thanks a lot. And yeah, man, take care.
Darren, thank you so much for having me. You're an amazing host, and you will be very successful. I could tell, because you definitely know how to ask the right questions. You have a high standard of emotional intelligence. It's easy to tell, and you will find your way easily. I have no doubt. Thank you so much for having me.
That. Thank you, man. All right, take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.